From deep in the heart of West Texas, it's the Tim Kreitz Adventures Podcast. Talking motorcycles, music, beer brewing, pop culture, adventure, and all points in between. Now, here's your host, Tim Kreitz.
Welcome back once again to the Tim Kreitz Adventures Podcast. Man, it has been quite a while since I did a podcast on this channel. I've been doing a whole bunch with Matt Van on his podcasting channel, The Van Cave, and as a result, partially, I've fallen away from doing them as much on my channel. But I have some good subject matter to talk about today, and I thought I would share some of what I'm going through right now as a motorcyclist out here in West Texas in the middle of one of the craziest oil booms we have ever had in this area. Now, the way I will be titling and tagging this podcast, it's very likely that people who are interested in moving to this area for an oil field job might find it. I would recommend that you guys stick around and listen to this podcast, even if you're not into motorcycles, because we're going to talk about what life is like out here and what the oil boom has done to the quality of life in West Texas. To say it has been a double-edged sword is a huge understatement. It has brought great wealth and great misery all at the same time. For those of you who may not be aware of what's going on right now, the oil boom is bringing in people from all over the country to live here, mainly from depressed economic areas like the Rust Belt and that sort of thing. They're flocking here because they are obviously having a hard time making a decent living where they currently reside, and they see in the media and on job sites where you can make $150,000 a year doing something as simple as driving a truck out here. And that's true. So there has been this massive influx of human beings into the Permian Basin area. That has resulted in a housing shortage. It has resulted in a massive spike in the cost of living. The taxing entities have gone insane and taxation is through the roof. And with all of this madness has come, as you might imagine, an overpopulation problem. On the outskirts of both Midland and Odessa and other area towns right now, we have what we longtime locals, native West Texans, just refer to as shanty towns. These are makeshift RV parks and makeshift tiny house slums where people coming in to work an oil field job are often forced to live, and they have turned the middle of nowhere basically into these little unsightly population centers. So logically, crime is way up and traffic fatalities are way up because these little bitty roads, these little farm to market roads, along with the municipal streets and the highway system, none of which were engineered or designed infrastructurally to handle this many people, have essentially become meat grinders. Recent data from TxDOT, the Texas Department of Transportation, says that even though the Permian Basin comprises only about 2% of the population of Texas, it accounts for a little bit under 12% of the total traffic fatalities right now. So, as you might have gathered by now, this really saps the joy out of riding a motorcycle when you have to constantly be within this mixmaster of madness on the roads. And for several reasons, this has really been the year where I have become super cognizant of just how much of a hellhole I live in. Part of what has contributed to that has been the fantastic motorcycle trips I've taken outside of West Texas this year. This has definitely been one of my best years for motorcycle trips, but has also accentuated just how bad the riding is at home. Back in the springtime, Britt, Cliff, and I rode the hill country. We did like an 800-mile tour. It was fantastic. Later in the year, Cliff and I rode Southern California, which was also fantastic. And then last month, Jeff, Cliff, and I met in the New Mexico high country and rode there. And that was just a little slice of heaven on earth. It was on the Southern California trip that I realized the traffic is better in Southern California than it is in West Texas. And since we got back from the New Mexico ride in particular, there have been so many accidents and so many bad things have happened out on the West Texas roads that I have not tried to get an organized ride together to do a day ride, a ghost town ride, anything like that, to even make a video, to make an episode of Tim Kreitz Adventures. The other thing that has me sort of hypervigilant with regard to this subject is just how many accidents I've seen personally this year, rolling up on them after the fact, that sort of thing. Here in West Texas, we now have a highway called the Road of Death. If that gives you any kind of an idea of just how horrible it is on the roads right now. You combine that with a lack of law enforcement and traffic enforcement, that sort of thing. The labor shortage has created a shortage of police officers because all the police officers are working in the oil field right now because they can make 3 or 4 times more money. So the town I live in is about 50 plus police officers short. So there's nobody really working traffic enforcement right now, which it's just the way it is right now. The police officers we do have are frying much bigger fish, and that's just the way that goes. So in many respects, West Texas has reverted back to sort of a wild, wild west status in its own way. Not only has it become a miserable place to ride motorcycles, it has just become a miserable place to live in general. That reality really came to the front of my mind and hit home with me last week when I rolled up on a motorcycle car accident. There were a bunch of people there. The emergency services had not yet arrived. It was in a rural area near my dad's house. And I would be very surprised if the rider survived. Now, I don't know any of the circumstances around how the accident happened, so I'm not making any judgments about whose fault it was or how it could have been avoided. All I know is I rolled up on some really repugnant, horrible stuff. And look, I know stuff like that happens every day, not just with regard to motorcycles, but cars crash and trains crash and planes crash. And I know how it is. I know the realities of life. But this has been on my mind, and so it had maybe a little bit bigger effect on me than it normally would have. So you combine all those factors with the fact that the heat just does not seem to want to break this year. Here it is, end of September, beginning of October, and we're still having 95 plus degree days out here. I just haven't been on fire to hop on any of my motorcycles and go out and have a day ride or do any exploring or shoot a video. The whole scene just has me really uninspired at the moment. And that really sucks because there are few things that I do for enjoyment in my life that rival motorcycle riding. It's just a very healing, spiritual experience for me, and it sucks to be a little bit burned out on it right now. It's one of those things you don't ever want to burn out on. But if there's another thing I've learned about being on 2 wheels for the past 40 years, it's that when riding doesn't feel right, don't ride. That's just all there is to it. Listen to your instincts, listen to your intuitions, especially as a motorcyclist, and ride when it's right and don't ride when it's not right. And right now, it's just not right. So for those of you who are always sending me messages wondering, when is the next Tim Kreitz Adventures episode coming out? I can't wait to see it. It's coming. We're going to do some more stuff before the end of the year for sure. The weather is finally starting to get nice again, and I do want to get out and enjoy the fall weather, but I'm just sort of dealing with all of this right now. I'm just sort of going through it, but don't worry, I will come through it. I'll come out the other side, and it will be business as usual here on the old Tim Kreitz Adventures channel. You can count on that. In fact, in November, I'm hoping to make a ride, hopefully with Cliff or someone, back down to Alpine where we went a couple of years ago, because the Union Pacific Big Boy locomotive is going to be there on display for a while, and I think that would make a really neat episode. And plus, it's just something that I want to see, and when you can combine something as cool as an old locomotive that's been restored with riding a motorcycle, hey, that's what it's all about right there. It doesn't get much better than that. But in the meantime, until we can get some of that stuff planned, quite honestly, I'm just going to be dealing with the West Texas hellhole. One of the things I'm struggling with regard to this whole oil boom thing is that I've lost the West Texas that I once loved. The ability to go on a ride to the middle of nowhere, to a ghost town, to some historic place, or etc., and have it all to yourself, not see any traffic, certainly not be worried about being run over by a truck, that sort of thing, that's gone. That West Texas is gone. It's a new West Texas. It's a wild, crazy West Texas. It's a West Texas that's difficult to live in. I could always handle the fact that I lived in an ugly part of the country that was flat as a dime, and I could deal with the dust storms, and I could deal with the wildfires and all of that sort of stuff. That never was a problem. But now the things that I have always historically loved about West Texas that made the bad things worth putting up for are slowly going away. That has been a hard pill to swallow for me, and something that I'm dealing with right now. I'm at a point where I either need to learn how to deal with it in a healthy way and figure out a way to enjoy it, or I need to sell everything and leave. Both of those options are on the table in my mind right now. I just don't know what to do. And for those of you listening to this podcast who are in Missouri or Michigan or California or wherever it is you are, and you are considering the big life-changing move out here to the West Texas oil patch so you can make your fortune and enjoy life again, it's not that cut and dried. It's not going to be that easy for you. When you get here, the first thing you're going to deal with is the fact that everything is extremely expensive. Everything from rent to food. You will be lucky to find a place that you can rent. You will be looking at apartments, small efficiency apartments, in the $1,000 to $2,000 a month range, if you can find one. And forget about actual real estate, being a property owner. You're going to be dealing with a lack of available real estate and housing. And then what is available will be priced, somewhere around $200 a square foot or more. Then you have to deal with property taxes. The taxing entities, as I mentioned earlier, are out of control. Local politics as well is slowly getting out of control. And along those lines, where local government and taxation intersects, a gigantic school bond initiative is being forced down the throat of the taxpayer here. In November, we will vote on it. Hopefully we will vote it down. But this little town that I grew up in with 69,000, 79,000 people in it is now trying to pass a school bond initiative that with interest would work out to about $1 billion with a B dollars. That in and of itself will make being a property owner prohibitive. That sort of taxing philosophy. It's really, really bad times here right now for the average person. Yeah, if I wanted to drive a truck or work out on an oil rig and work 80 hours a week, and I could make my $100,000+ a year, I might have a slightly different perspective on this, admittedly, but that's not me. That's not what I want to do. That's not what I do. I'm an artist by nature, and I'm secretly hoping for a giant oil bust at this point. I know that sounds terrible, but I was doing just fine when oil was $16 a barrel, and I know that there would definitely be some hiccups with a bust of that magnitude at this point, but I feel like I could pick up pretty much where I left off and eke out a living and enjoy a quiet, beautiful West Texas without a zillion people at each other's throats, up each other's asses, honking and yelling at each other and complaining in line, and the increased crime and the constant deaths on the road. The history of West Texas has historically been boom and bust, boom and bust, boom and bust. So, yeah, I feel like I could do just fine in an oil bust in West Texas right now. And I know all this sounds a little bit depressing right now and kind of a bummer, and it kind of is. I'm kind of in a bummer mood here lately, but I think that will improve as the weather changes. Once we get some nice, true, crisp fall weather to roll in here, my mood will lift a little bit. It's been a long summer of sweating, and it has been a long summer of dealing with traffic and overcrowding and overpopulation and all of the nonsense that comes with living in a crowded place. And I think just a change in the weather will probably lift my spirits a little bit. Not that they're terribly bad right now. I just wanted to kind of get this off my chest, let the regular viewers of Tim Kreitz Adventures know what I've been going through a little bit, why there haven't been that many videos since California and New Mexico. I put together that little short film to the narration of that Jim Harrison poem, And I thought that turned out really nice. You guys apparently did too. I got a lot of good compliments on that, and it got a lot of shares for a Tim Kreitz video across social media. So I was pretty pleased with that. That sort of encapsulates how introspective I have been over the course of the summer, especially since the beginning of the summer. Maybe that and this podcast will put a bookend on it, and we'll end the year on a very positive note. That's my wish. So more videos coming, more fun coming. I'm doing some alternative subject matter that I may turn into Tim Kreitz Adventures episodes. Specifically, I'm building some mid and high power rockets that I think might make for good episodes. And there are some Tim Kreitz Adventures viewers right here in West Texas that want to get together for like a bike night, and for me to be there and maybe shoot a video, and we'll just have some fun. So hopefully that'll happen in October as the weather cools off and we're enjoying some nice fall evenings. Anyway, until all that gets going, keep your chin up. I'm going to keep my chin up. Despite the sort of melancholy tone of this podcast, we're gonna make it. We're gonna do just fine. Everything's gonna be fine out here in West Texas one way or another. I'm just dealing with it, as I said. You guys have a great beginning to fall. I know it's technically already underway in some parts of the country and parts of the world for sure. We'll see you guys very soon. Thank you very much. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. See you next time.